Aloha, everyone, and welcome to the Empowered Hour. Today, I've got my friend Rudy on. Rudy, how are you doing? Aloha.
Aloha, I'm doing wonderful. Thank you very much. Good to see you, Tasha.
Good to see you too. So, Rudy, for the audience, tell them what you do.
Okay, so I have quite a background. I'm a man with many hats. I currently am a site supervisor at a multi-tenant high-rise building here in San Francisco. I'm a supervisor for a security staff here. And then I also have my executive protection certification through the International Training Commission out of Maryland. And then I have
That's why
two
you look
black.
so official.
I'm sorry.
I
Oh
said, that's
yeah.
why you look so official.
Yes,
You got to get
exactly.
it. I'm intimidated.
I'm on my lunch break. Goodness. So, so that's a little bit about my background. I also work for. I've worked for Impact Bay Area for many years, for 10 years, are currently 12 years now, and then have been working with Impact Global for the last couple of years, last few years now.
That's awesome.
Mhm.
So, with that work, how did you get into that work?
Interestingly enough, I was on a protection detail with a young lady whom I was protecting at the time, had mentioned something about this full force self-defense stuff that she had taken. And so she had mentioned Impact Bay Area and said that they're always hiring suits. And so I went to go check out this public celebration. It was the last three fights of that particular celebration. And there are a few things that I saw that attracted me right away. And one of the things were there was a lot of verbal interaction between the assailant and the person being attacked. And there was a lot of really positive um, voice coming back from the person being attacked. They were using really good self-defense verbiage. And I like that a lot. Another thing that I saw that they were doing was they were using gross motor skill movements. They were using the large muscle groups, which is easily accessible when adrenalized. And they were striking some of the most vulnerable targets on usually a much larger assailant. So I signed up right away, did an extensive background check, and then started training and did several hundred hours of training in the suit so that I could become fully certified as an instructor, mock assailant.
That's great. And you were actually my first suit. I got to meet you in New York. So that was really awesome. You and Don Hart. Uh,
Yes.
and it was definitely a game changer for me, just having both of you there because and we can go into this too. There's a whole spectrum when it comes to self-defense. And I think that
Right.
that's really important to share just because for me, before taking ESD, before doing impact training, I had done several different styles of self-defense.
Right.
And I think that it is important to differentiate the ones that you're currently doing that I work on and others that might be out there. So if you could talk a little bit about that, that would be great.
So yeah, I think that all forms of martial arts are great, and they all have particular tools that may attach or may not attach to particular persons taking the art. So I don't think any focus on one particular art is great. I think it's good to have multiple tools coming from different resources. But one of the things about self-defense, it is a spectrum, and there are many things that are involved within the spectrum. And the first thing would be self-defense law, right? We have to know what the law is pertaining to self-defense. And there are a couple things surrounding that. First, the threat must be real. You must have tried all means of escape, and including using your voice to get somebody to back off, right? And then we must use only just enough force to get to safety. But that's also contextual because let's say if I'm near a store or in a crowded area, I can yell for help and just run a short distance to get to safety, a storefront or something like that, or to a group of adults, something like that. But if I'm out on a trailhead 3-4 miles away from anybody, that means I'm going to have to apply more force. Or if I'm isolated or something like that, I'm going to have to apply more force and do more damage in order to get to safety. So there's that. And then there's environmental awareness. And environmental awareness is being aware of your environment, right? If you're in a big city, a large city like this, the demographics change from blocks to block. So you have to be aware of what takes place in your environment. If you're traveling, say, for example, and you go to another nation, you have to know what the locals wear so you can kind of blend in. You don't want to really stand out. You also need to know what types of crimes take place in those areas, what can keep you safe from those crimes. And that kind of leads into, is it day or night? Am I in a safe area? Are there dangers around me? Is there a high crime rate around here? All these things you kind of want to be aware of, right? Where's my safety? And am I in what is called like a funnel of death, right? They also call it, what is it, AKA the fatal funnel. And what that can mean is, let's say I'm entering a doorway or I'm exiting a parking garage or something like that. These are funnels. And this is where the crime rate tends to increase, right? Because this is an optimum place for a criminal to commit their crime. So
Yeah.
we have to be aware of these things within our environment so that we can keep ourselves safer, right? And then there's, physical technique, there's voice commitment, and then, commitment to doing physical harm to somebody else. Sometimes that is the hardest thing to do, is to harm another person, especially when we're really good people. We kind of tend to stop at stoplights and stop at the stop signs and, stop and let somebody walk by. But criminals, they don't have this in them, and they will do harm to people whenever they have the opportunity. So, that's the criminal behavior. What does a criminal need to commit their crime, right? So the rough idea of what they want, an easy escape, multiple escape routes, a motive of what they're looking for, a tactical advantage, and then they're either going for property and resources, harm and or threat, and then or life, right? And then also, like, what level of damage is this criminal willing to take on versus give, right? What are they willing to give versus take, I should say. So there are all these different layers of the self-defense spectrum.
Yeah, and you had mentioned, the self-awareness piece. I think that that's so important because you have different people with different reactions. I know that for some people, their automatic reaction is, I'm going to go pummel something. And then other people, they just cower and freeze. So there's like the fight, flight, or freeze. I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about that.
Sure, absolutely. So, how do I feel? Do I feel like I'm sick or ill? Right? Do I feel like I'm injured? Maybe I'm sore from a major workout or something like that. So maybe some of my tools aren't as available as they would normally be if I'm, sick or ill or sore or maybe even injured. Maybe I have an injury. Maybe I'm on crutches or something like that. So I need to assess the tools that I have available, and I need to assess the targets that I have available. But there's also, you were saying about, like, some people are a little more timid to commit damage than somebody that is a little bit more skilled or has more, I would say, more experience in dealing with something like this, right? Is that what you were asking?
I was talking about, the fight, flight, or freeze response. So a lot of times people, they have different reactions when it comes to high adrenaline and high stress scenarios.
Right.
Yeah. So
So
go ahead.
So yeah, I would say that yes, absolutely. Everybody has a different freeze response, and in the beginning, especially if you haven't dealt with adrenalized base scenarios or even adrenalized situations within your life, your freeze response can be greater. Even if you have experienced it and it's traumatic, it can be super long freeze response, right? You can totally shell up. So what we intend to do by teaching this full force self-defense stuff is shorten the freeze response. Everybody will still have a freeze response, but the freeze response gets shorter and shorter and shorter and shorter. And then you have a more positive response as well, whether it's putting your hands up and using your voice and protecting yourself, or going to safety while you're using your voice and keeping an eye on the aggressor, or just going straight to town and committing a committed strike to a vital target to overcome your attacker.
Now I have to ask, has there ever been a time that you have been in an adverse situation that you had to get yourself out of?
Unfortunately, several times, yes. Yes, I've been in several altercations, unfortunately, in my younger years, which kind of brought me full circle to want to protect people and help people and teach people how to become safe and how to protect themselves. As opposed to where I used to be in the industry of protection, you can only protect somebody for so long. And as soon as you leave their side, you're not able to protect that person. So that's where the full circle came in. I wanted to start protecting people. But yes, I have certainly been in altercations. And I would say that my freeze response has always been pretty short.
Do you, have you been in altercations since you've done your training, your impact training? And how had that differed?
Yes. So very much different. And, doing a lot of research on criminal behavior and research on environment and, physical self-defense has kind of put a new confidence in my aura, I guess you could say. And criminals kind of tend to see that. So if you take a full force self-defense class, the criminal is going to see that you're more confident. So it's far less likely you're going to have somebody attack you. But going back to your question, I'm sorry, I kind of went off track there.
That's okay. No, I was just saying, when I've seen a huge difference in the way that I've responded to adverse situations since I've had my training. And I know that you were saying you ended up getting into more fights in your younger years. So I'm just wondering, what were the differences that you saw for yourself? And obviously confidence, I think that that's a huge one. When you're exuding that, people just automatically, they're like, oh, I don't want to mess with that person.
Right. And I would say, first off was my confidence within myself. I knew that I didn't have to go physical anymore. So it kind of gave me the tools that I had on my tool belt, knowing that I had access to these tools and not necessarily having to use them. So it gave me a different sense of awareness. It also calmed me down quite a bit. So I'm able to communicate with people or give them a look and, let them know that I am not here to be reckoned with, I guess you could say, or
Security
to.
look, like that one.
I'm sorry.
I said the security look, that one.
It is that look, yes, exactly. You give them that look, and they just know that you're not out for trouble. You could even just look at somebody with a show of respect, like I see where you're coming from, I see you, or I can recognize you. Just giving somebody a look you don't have to give somebody that mean look, right? You could look at somebody like, I recognize you. You give them the up and down, and you continue on through your day, right? You just let them know that, yep, I see you, I recognize you, I'm going to continue forward. So that's kind of given me that, and I would say that I am more opt to almost run away from trouble than I am to get into trouble.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I'm definitely going to flee, and it's not flee of fear; it's more flee of safety, I think, and safety for maybe even both parties, depending on the circumstance.
Yeah.
In protection of others, that's something else, because I try not to put myself in harm's way, but I honestly, I feel like if I see somebody that is being victimized and they're helpless or not able to help themselves, I am certainly going to step in. Absolutely.
Now, you've been doing this for a really long time, and I imagine that there's a lot of stories that really impact you. Is there a particular story, success story, where you helped someone and that really stuck out in your mind?
Yes. So I was at strike force fights in San Jose one year, and it was when they were still relatively small, and they held them at the San Jose Civic. I walked out, I stepped out for intermission, and I looked over and I see this big, huge guy. He was just pummeling this guy on the ground, and the guy looked like he was in really bad shape and being harmed pretty badly. So my intuition, my instinct was like, rush this guy and tackle him right off this guy. And as I started running towards the guy looked up at me, and you can tell like he just got out of prison or out of jail. He's a pretty scrappy looking guy. And I thought, man, if I tackle this guy, it's going to be he and I, and it's going to be a battle. We're going to be scrapping. And I thought, this is probably not in my best interest. So what I did is I rushed toward him, and as he looked up at me, I said, "Hey, dude, the cops are coming. What are you doing?" And he got up and turned and ran down the sidewalk as fast as he could. And I realized right then, just by using my voice and being assertive, I didn't have to be aggressive anymore. So that really stands out in my mind still to this day. And I probably saved the guy's life.
That's awesome. And you're doing impact trainings, but I also have seen that you're doing some of your own, training.
do.
I wanted to see if you could do a little share out of what that's
Sure.
like.
I can elaborate a little bit. Sure. So I do a lot of say women's self-defense workshop, excuse me. And those are, you know, I pretty much talk a lot about awareness about the criminal behavior and how to make yourself a hard target. And then I do a men's combatives class, and this is basically based on home invasion type stuff. Like, what do you do if you get a knock at the door at 5 p.m. And you have one person at the door? You open the door, and then three guys rush in. How can you stop these attackers? What are your most effective weapons, and what tools would you strike in this case, right? How do you shut them down immediately? It's super important, because it's not like a martial arts fight, or not like an impact one-on-one thing where you're just striking one person and stopping them. You have three people rushing you, and they intend to do great harm to you and or your family. A lot of times, you know, people think that home invasions are in the middle of the night, or, you know, when you're in bed sleeping or whatnot, but it's not true. The most common time for a home invasion is right in the evening when you're getting ready to have dinner time. You sit down, all the family's, you know, moving around the house, and you're getting ready to sit down and have dinner, and all of a sudden you get a knock on the door, and somebody answers the door, you know, and then they rush in and they start separating people in the home. So it's really important to have tools and strategies around these type of behaviors, or at least to have the knowledge, right? If I have the tools and the knowledge, then it's far less likely that I'm ever going to become a victim of this type of crime. So
Right.
that's what it's all about. And then I do a kids stranger danger class, which is a lot of fun. Get the kids running around and yelling, "This is not my daddy. Don't touch me there." This type of thing. You give them these type of voice, or tools to use in their voice, and also, you know, teach them how to get to safety and how to latch onto each other's arms and sit down to make themselves heavier or harder to move. How to latch onto a bicycle or a bench in a park. These types of things are what I teach, and I keep it fun and light, of course.
That's awesome. So how can people get a hold of you if they're interested in a session, or you know, if they want to go to your website? Do you have something specific that
Don't have a website. I don't. It's something that I've really been thinking about. Been doing these for several years, and I pretty much I do a few a year typically, but lately I've been trying to I want to do more. So I just create a flyer and put it out on my Facebook and my Instagram. But my email address is trejomod@yahoo.com. If you're interested in something like that, please get a hold of me. I am happy to teach you the skills that I have. I'm happy to share some knowledge to help keep you safe.
very cool. So Rudy, my last question is, if you had advice for your younger self, what would it be?
I'm sorry, if I had what?
Advice for your younger self, what would it be?
Wow, that's huge advice. I would say stay connected to positive people at a younger age. Stay with a good group and not venture out with the bad guys so much.
Gotcha. There you go.
Yeah.
Well, Rudy, thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it, Tasha.
Yep. And if you want to look at his bio or anything like that, just check out the description and the YouTube channel.